When you look at a dollar bill, a rupee, a euro, or a yen, it feels like money. You hold it, you spend it, you save it, and you assume it has value because your government says so. But the truth is far stranger and far more unsettling. National currencies are not the true foundation of the global financial system. They are only the outer wrapping. Behind every visible currency on Earth, there exists another layer, a hidden benchmark, an invisible reserve that quietly dictates what your money is actually worth. This is the shadow reserve, a currency you never see, never hold, and never vote for. Yet it determines everything from fuel prices to food inflation, from interest rates to national debt. It's the silent operating system of global economics, a system so embedded, so widely accepted by banks, corporations, and governments that most people never question it. Your country may print money, but it does not control value. That power belongs to the hidden reserve behind the currency, a reserve built on commodities, bonds, military strength, global trade networks, and centuries-old financial agreements that the public never notices. This is why nations rise or collapse without warning. It's why inflation can explode even when you're working harder than ever. It's why currencies in different countries move in perfect synchrony, as if responding to a single, invisible command. And here's the disturbing reality. Every country believes it's independent, but they all plugged into the same price-setting grid, the hidden reserve that operates above nations, beyond borders, and outside democracy. In this segment, we begin peeling back the surface layer of money itself. Because once you understand the shadow reserve, you stop seeing currencies and start seeing the power that controls them. If the shadow reserve is the invisible currency behind all nations, then the hidden network that supports it is the machinery that keeps the entire system alive. This network does not exist on maps. It isn't listed in government directories. Yet it connects every major bank, every central bank, and every government treasury on Earth, quietly, seamlessly, and with almost no public awareness. It begins with offshore liquidity pools, massive vaults of value stored not in cash, but in commodities, sovereign bonds, rare metals, foreign reserves, and interbank credit lines. These pools act like the blood supply of the financial world, able to move billions across borders with a single keystroke. They are located in places like the Cayman Islands, Luxembourg, Switzerland, Singapore, financial shadows where regulation does not reach. Then there are the global clearing banks, institutions that act as the world's money routers. Whenever two countries trade oil, ships, weapons, tech, or food, these clearing banks settle the transaction, not in visible currency, but in the underlying shadow reserve that both nations depend on. It's the quiet handshake behind every economic exchange. Next comes the commodity backstop layer, the real-world assets that give the shadow reserve its strength. Oil, gold, rare earth metals, global shipping routes, even military-controlled resources, all are part of the backbone. And above them all sit the supranational financial agreements. IMF quota systems, World Bank liquidity frameworks, cross-border swap lines, G20 bank treaties, an invisible architecture that dictates how nations must behave if they want access to global capital. Individually, these structures seem ordinary. Together, they form a hidden empire, a silent network that decides credit, value, currency strength, and national survival. This is the machinery of the shadow reserve, and almost nobody knows it even exists. Every textbook tells you the same story. Central banks control money. They set interest rates, regulate inflation, stabilize currencies, and guide national economics. But when you zoom out, beyond borders, beyond politics, beyond the facade, a different picture emerges. Central banks are not the apex of power. They are middle managers in a much larger, older, and far more secretive monetary hierarchy, the shadow reserve. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Central banks don't actually control the global financial system. They respond to it. Interest rates are influenced by global liquidity flows, not national decisions. Inflation is shaped by commodity-backed reserves, not central bank speeches. Currency value is determined by multinational capital pools, not domestic policies. When the Federal Reserve or ECB announces a policy shift, they are often reacting to changes in the shadow reserve network, the hidden architecture that moves far faster than any visible institution. But who controls this hidden structure? Not politicians, not voters, not the public. The real power lies with a cluster of supranational financial institutions, megabanks, sovereign wealth funds, and century-old banking dynasties that control the pipelines of global credit. These entities manage trillions across borders, unrestricted by national laws or elections. They influence IMF decisions, shape World Bank policies, and participate in confidential liquidity swap agreements that even most lawmakers don't know exist. Central banks appear powerful because they're the face of the system. But behind them is the shadow reserve, a higher layer of control that sets the rules central banks must follow. This is why nations obey invisible economic forces they can't explain. This is why crises spread globally in minutes. And this is why true financial power never appears on TV, because it operates above the institutions we retold are in charge. The real issuers of power aren't central banks, but the architects of the shadow reserve. Every major financial crisis in history looks sudden from the outside. A market crashes, a currency collapses, a country defaults, a war erupts. But behind the headlines, behind the panic, and behind the political speeches, something else is happening. The shadow reserve is quietly shifting its weight. This hidden reserve isn't static. It constantly rebalances itself based on global power, resource control, and financial dominance. And the moments when these rebalances happen are the moments we call crises. In reality, they are resets, silent reorganizations of the world's monetary hierarchy. Think about the Great Depression, the abandonment of the gold standard, the 1971 Nixon shock, the 2008 meltdown, the 2020 global shutdown, the BRICS commodity push. Each event looks unique, but they all share one trait. The underlying reserve system was moving from one foundation to another. When wars break out, oil reserves shift hands. Shipping routes change. Gold moves through secret channels. Sanctions freeze assets. Bonds get rerouted. Nations lose access to liquidity pools. And instantly, the shadow reserve adjusts itself, not based on morality or democracy, but on raw control. This is why some countries collapse overnight while others mysteriously survive. It's why inflation erupts in one region but not another. The visible triggers, elections, protests, coups, market crashes, are just surface noise. The real event is happening underground. The shadow reserve is recalibrating. Sometimes the reset is small, a change in liquidity rules, a shift in commodity pricing. Other times it's massive, a new global currency framework quietly replacing the old. But the public never sees the shift coming, because the system that determines these global resets was never meant to be seen at all. Crises are not accidents. They are the moments when the shadow reserve rewrites the rules of the world. Every empire, every currency, every financial system in history has believed one thing, that its version of money would last forever. Rome believed it. Britain believed it. The early American system believed it. And today, the institutions that run the shadow reserve believe the same. But no reserve, no matter how hidden, is immune to collapse. The shadow reserve only works as long as the world trusts the underlying asset that backs it. For decades, that asset has shifted from gold to oil, from oil to debt, and now from debt towards something even more abstract: digital influence and data power. But eventually, the foundation becomes too stretched, too fragile, too artificial to support the global system sitting on top of it. When that moment arrives, the collapse won't look like Hollywood. There won't be explosions or riots on day one. Instead, it will look like a slow freeze. Liquidity evaporates. Currencies weaken. Debt markets seize. Nations start hoarding commodities. Corporations pull cash offshore. Banks restrict withdrawals temporarily. Governments announce emergency measures. Then comes the acceleration. Trade routes break. Trust evaporates. Countries form new alliances. Competing reserve systems emerge. A new global currency, digital, commodity-backed, or AI-managed, rises from the chaos. But the deepest change won't be financial. It will be psychological. For the first time in centuries, humanity will be forced to ask a forbidden question. If the reserve behind money collapses, what is money really worth? And for the first time ever, the world might face an uncomfortable truth. Money was never the power. Control over the reserve behind it was.